AI also has its own limits, right? When you're throwing so much of data, when your number of parameters start growing, right? Your variables start growing. After a certain point in time, it's difficult to get the results on AI. So things like protein folding, drug discovery, identifying new materials. It's a very, very different world altogether that we are getting into. That is what is, I believe, will be enabled by quantum computing. The more and more we get it. Technology is the enabler for business. Technology is driving business today. Right? Earlier, you used to get a problem statement, then you used to build technology for it. Right? You used to build systems for it. Today, technologies are driving business. So because it is technically possible now, that is becoming a business. So it's like putting the cart before the horse.
We have been really making some buzz around Metaverse via our podcasts, haven't we? But why not? This digital environment has such excellent economic prospects that it is expected to reach 800 billion by the middle of this decade. And by 2030, that number is expected to multiply to 2.5 trillion. Looking at these numbers, it is clear why the big technology companies see Metaverse as the future of internet, or maybe an entirely new universe. I cannot exaggerate this more. Today, we have a special guest who is a part of the leadership of one of the prominent and known names for technology in India, and which is keeping a sharp focus on this new digital environment. We would like to welcome Kanchan for this amazing podcast series. Kanchan is currently the Metaverse Technology Head in Maker's Lab in Tech Mahindra. She has 24 years of rich, hands-on experience in IT delivery, sales, and innovation. She has been instrumental in building and growing the Metaverse practice in Tech Mahindra. Kanchan also heads the product strategy in Maker's Lab. Her earlier research was in Agritech space and is also interested in quantum computing. Kanchan has been a fellow with the World Economic Forum Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution and is a part of the Artificial Intelligence of our Agricultural Innovation Program. We are very, very excited for you to see this podcast and what it is having in store for you. So stay tuned till the end. So we are very, very glad to have you in this podcast today with us, Kanchan, and thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we get into the conversation, we would like to know a brief of your professional journey and how it, grew to become a role which is so crucially, let's say, associated with metaverse in more, aspects than one.
So my journey started in a small village, not exactly village, I would say it's a town where I did my schooling. It is called Beed, which is in the interiors of Maharashtra. And because I was doing good in my studies, my parents actually left everything and shifted to Aurangabad, which is a better city, just to allow me to and my brother to be educated properly. And I did my engineering over there in Aurangabad for electronics and telecommunications. And 24 years ago, I joined Tech Mahindra. That time it was Mahindra British Telecom. I started as a developer and did lots of different kinds of work, right? As a developer, as a tester, then it is a typical cycle you do in IT. You grow into becoming a team leader, a designer, then you start leading bigger and bigger teams. And that's how my journey went. Initially, I got into kind of managing teams, 2-3 years experience, 3 years or so. And after that, it's been a very interesting journey. I worked for one client for almost 10 to 15 years. It was lots of different roles that we got to do, which typically wouldn't have been done by a third party, right? So that was a major part where kind of my professional life got shaped up. Did very challenging different kinds of work. Then I said, okay, I've done this. I've led teams of more than 300 people. So then what next? And I have always been restless kind of that way, that I want to always keep on learning new things. So I said, okay, let me do pre-sales. Then I moved into pre-sales for a couple of years. Then for 3 years, I did sales. And then when I came back, it was like, okay, the entire cycle I've done, I've got the experience about how each of the things work. So then I said, okay, what is my passion really? So after about 20-21 years in the industry, you start thinking, okay, what excites me the most? And the experience that I had while I did some creative work, new product and things like that, innovation, creativity, that was something that really inspired me. For almost 1.5 years, I did research and product development in Agritech. And recently, I have also taken over the Metaverse as a competency to develop and progress. So that's been my journey so far.
Oh, that's pretty inspiring, I would say, you know. I mean, you
Thank you.
finally took the leap to see the whole circle, how it works, understand each and everything. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, that always is also challenging because I kept on shifting from a management role to a technical role to a management role to a technical, and now currently I'm again
Yeah,
into that mode.
I know.
You're getting into management, you're getting into technology. But in IT, I believe becoming pure managers is difficult. In fact, even for the manager.
yeah,
The industry has come to realize now that it is the techno managers that people need. You need to have that experience to be able to lead your teams.
Right.
And so it is very important for everyone to kind of remain updated and learn technology and go with the change, go with the pace of change.
true, completely true.
So, like you mentioned that you have started your career like 24 years ago and you joined Tech Mahindra. So, when you joined and when you started your career, the time when digital media was not there and it was not significant, and now when present, major share of marketing operations are done digitally. So, what are your observations about now and then? What are the shifts that you've observed so far?
Right. Yeah, it seems like an old person, but okay, let me speak about that, because yeah, it is true that this journey that the world has gone through,
Right.
we have been participants in that. We all have contributed in one way or the other.
Correct.
And we have been, I think our generation is the one which has seen a very huge pace of change. So if you look at when I joined, and what difference I see is between then and now is there is an explosion of information, right? Earlier, when we started to learn anything, you had to go for books, those big books, read things, yeah, or get someone train you for days together. Now you get a capsule for everything. Everything is laid out for you. So that's a big shift. Second shift I see is that the pace of change has grown like anything. Right? If you see the way things are changing, every day there's a new thing coming up. It was not so that fast, or that pace of change was not there. Change was always there. Change has been the constant across ages, but the pace is completely different now. And that is one thing that I've seen in the last 20 years, particularly. We have seen major things change. When it comes to operations and marketing and all, earlier you had to really reach out to people in different ways, right? It was more personally, you had to go and really talk to people. There was a lot of personal touch, which kind of is different now. The basic decision-making process for investing or buying anything today is completely changed. Anytime anyone wants to buy anything, first they'll go and say, okay, what are my friends saying? What are my reviews? My kid today says, okay, wait, let me check the reviews before you spend anything on this. So it's like that. And you are believing faceless people, really, frankly. You're believing those faceless people who have kindly put out their comments if you want to buy something. So that trust has grown in a way. But at the same time, personal touch is something people still miss. So if you see now, it's kind of a balance. How do you really get that balance right between having a personal touch, at the same time putting out all the right information, and very importantly, countering the misinformation? That has become a biggest issue today. That although, yes, it is true that you are able to put a lot of information, verification of that information, all the deep fakes and things that are going on, for a human mind, it becomes really very difficult to understand and just say what is what. I mean, what is real, what is not real, what to believe, what to not believe. So that is a challenge. So earlier the challenge was reaching out, providing information, inspiring people to buy. Today it is like, yes, so much of information is there. How do you personalize that, as well as then give them, make sure that even for enterprises, even for businesses, it is important. It's not only politics, it's also businesses where people have to ensure that the right messages are going out.
So now, like, since you've been in this journey for a long time, and I'm sure that you've executed a lot of projects till date. So which one was your favorite and why?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I have always been so involved with my work. It's like choosing out of your babies, which one is your favorite for me. So it's very difficult to do that. But I will say, I'll give you one or two. One was very, very challenging. The most challenging one was for migration of a very huge application, upgrade as well as migrate to a different virtual environment. And I was program managing that. So it was an application with about 60 interfaces. And we had to orchestrate and get all of that together. And it had failed multiple times. We had no downtime. It was just about 8 hours. And it was a very huge database, which we had to kind of shift to the other ones. So I was program managing this for the client. And that was one of the most challenging ones. We were in the office for 36 hours straight once it went live.
My God.
And it took us a couple of weeks to stabilize it after it went live, just to get, and it was a very, very critical system. So that was, I mean, that was the thing that I was mentioning about, right? Getting to do those roles that typically wouldn't come to a third. So that was one of those roles which I got to do, which was very challenging. But in the end, we did it as a team. Second one, I would say very inspiring, in the sense it was a big step for me personally. When sitting in the pre-sales organization, I worked with a few of my colleagues to come up with a new idea and create a product. So we started that, we built it. It gave me the confidence of creating. And it introduced me to my own passion as to, out of all of these things that I have done, what is it that I really love to do? So that introduced me. So that is why that is another thing. My colleagues built it further, and it went on to make a lot of business for the organization. And I would say the one that gave me immense satisfaction was the things that we did in Agritech, because it was connecting with the masses. It was trying to look at those people who are probably only hyped, but probably not too much work is being done for their real issues. So understanding what is happening in agriculture. So I was also a fellow with World Economic Forum for AI for AI, which is AI for agricultural innovation, or technology for agricultural innovation. So that was something which was very satisfying. So yeah, those are two or three I can talk about.
No, and I personally kind of, I would say happy to see how agriculture domain is now become a prominent domain. So earlier when we are considering tech, agriculture is not a part of that kitty. But now people know and recognize it as a segment that, there's Agritech and we are building something. Especially organizations like, Tech Mahindra, they are working for these companies. There's a big, promise to the world that, companies are functioning to bring it out. So that's really great to like just understand from you and hear from you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so being a part of, like one of the companies which is known for innovation and great leaders, you also currently like mentioned. So how important do you think that it is for a company to keep incorporating new tech rather? And how should companies or organizations like maybe startups or, growing businesses, how do you think that they should make sure that they are able to incorporate this in their system?
So see, I was talking about the pace of change, right? And the only thing constant in life is change. And that's the main thing that people hate, right? That's the reality. Whatever we say and do, when it is change, every time the processes are changing, this is changing, that is changing, people get frustrated. Before I understand one process, you're going to go and change it. So that is the challenge, really, to balance those out. Because you cannot, today we are in such a world that you cannot do away with technology. Technology is the enabler for business. Technology is driving business today, right? Earlier, you used to get a problem statement, then you used to build technology for it. right? You used to build systems for it. Today, technologies are driving business. So because it is technically possible now, that is becoming a business. So it's like putting the cart before the horse, really. But having said that, that is the reality. That is how things are changing today. And this will kind of go and saturate at a certain point, and things maybe will change in different ways. We don't know tomorrow. But it is very, very important for organizations to keep pace with the technology. To keep pace with business, they automatically need technology because technology is the biggest enabler. And while doing that, it is about maintaining that balance, right? Because in technology in itself will be able to help you only up to a certain point. It is the people aspect of it that comes into picture, where many times what I've observed is very beautiful, very interesting, very nice changes get flopped because people just don't accept it. So these things you have to manage as a whole. So in the Makers Lab, our leader, Mr. Nikhil Malhotra, keeps on saying that it's all about man and machine working together better. And I believe that is so true, because finally it is that, right? Machine is, in the sense, you can say, let's call it technology. So when the technology and the person start working together harmoniously, that is when I think this kind of pace and the change and technology changes and things that are happening, that will start getting stabilized. Stabilized in the sense, it is not that it will stop at that point. It will still continue to change. But then that harmony can continue in that way. Currently, it is like going up and down between people and technology is what I feel.
No, I think I completely agree with you on that. Having the harmony, and I think that is the most essential thing that we should establish moving forward also, because we are growing so much into the, let's say, world of AI, or the world of, the virtual world rather. So that if the balance is in place, then I think we would be able to adapt in a very better way.
Stability is important when the technology is changing each and every day. I mean, it's moving so fast in what space it's moving. We need to have some kind of stability, which actually helps, to move forward with the same pace that the technology is moving in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So you've been associated to Metaverse, space of Metaverse. And so I wanted to know, what are the radical shifts that can be emerged as concepts like Web 3.0, NFTs, blockchain? What are your observations on these?
So basically, with Metaverse, it is like that time when we were having that internet. Right?
Yes.
So earlier it was like information. So it was all first HTML, right? Static text, basic information. Then came the world of transactions, like in e-commerce, where you started doing activities on the internet. Now is the time the Metaverse is going to shift the whole thing again, where you will get from a 2D screen into a 3D world. The screen may remain the same. So it's not necessary that for Metaverse you need to have VR glasses and all that. It's not necessary. The same tools that you have today will give you that view of having a 3D experience, right? And that kind of opens up so many things. It really is going to, so if you remember those old HTML pages, they probably didn't even have color. Right? So even adding color. So there was one time when one of our clients wanted to change the buttons color. Okay, that was his requirement. And we said it's not possible technically, because at that point in time, the Netscape navigators of the world, and I think Chrome was not even there. It was Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator. I remember the browsers. And we had a hard time convincing the person that you can't change the color of your button. So it was like that, right? And those were the days when it was very bland. Then now you see interesting stuff. You see multimedia. You see videos. You see photos. You see a lot of interesting content. Now it's getting a new dimension. And that's the level of change that the Metaverse is bringing in. And so creativity. So artists are probably going to get a very good day going forward, because it is about that UI UX is not just like how you are arranging your screen or what is your journey. It is also about how you make the space look inspiring, how you declutter it, because today's websites are all cluttered. So
Cluttered, yeah.
that's your opportunity to declutter stuff. It is your opportunity to give a better customer experience. So that's how things are changing, and that's a big shift.
Right.
Because you're adding a dimension. So things are changing. It's an evolving space. Blockchain, again, as I was saying earlier, it is about that getting technology came at a faster pace. The use cases are following. It is like that. And at a certain point in time, that is going to kind of get in. So the entire space, because of the globalization, now it's like very easy for you to get anything from anywhere or talk to anyone anywhere, right?
Right.
Those changes combined with this kind of an explosion of the space where you get into 3D, that is the opportunity of the metaverse, I believe, because that's going to be a step change. There have been small changes, incremental changes in so many things, but this is certain to become a step change. It will take time. I won't say that immediately everything will move into the 3D space. It's going to take time, a few years maybe, but then eventually our clients or all the enterprises will need to move to that space, because this is also being driven like people like you, youngsters of today, right? They are driving this change as well. They are so native digitally. We always say that we are an analog generation. We are not a digital generation. But the kids of today, the 10 and 12-year-olds, and even the Gen Z, they are a different generation altogether, right? And the ones with the phones in their hand are another generation. So they are the ones who are going to push this change. And they are the ones who are going to get the buying power shortly. So that is how the change will be driven, even economically.
True, true. I mean,
True,
speaking of
true.
Web 3.0, Metaverse, NFTs, and blockchain, what do you think are the top 5 new trends in tech or in specific industries that people should keep an eye on?
Right. So in terms of trends, I would say that AI is now turning a new leaf. Okay, and these are also what we kind of focus on in the Makers Lab.
Yeah.
So we call it AI Next or AI++ for that matter, wherein now we are getting more into generative AI. Right? Earlier, it was all about predictions. It was all about getting a lot of data and then predicting something. Now it is becoming generative AI. So that is one trend to look out for, which is going to change the way things happen.
True.
Of course, Metaverse is another, Metaverse is another one where, again, as I was mentioning just now, it's going to be a big shift in terms of like how you present information, how you interact, how globally people interact. I think that is going to be the metaverse part. Then the third thing I would say is IoT and robotics. Now already all the new electronics that is coming to your homes or even industry is smart, smarter than people. So what is happening is that edge computing and that entire aspect of IoT and robotics, what drones can do, what robots can do, that man-machine together physically, physical machines, that also is going to be a one trend. It has been around for some time. But now it's kind of exploding. The space is exploding. The kind of use cases and personalized journeys you will be able to see as a user, that will come up more and more. Then I think one more is 5G. Because of 5G and the network, so to say, I mean, the kind of speeds we are able to get today, that is one of the major enablers even for Metaverse. So that and the infrastructure together and the edge computing. So the entire infrastructure, the way it has evolved, that is again something that is going to change. And taking that further, the fifth thing we believe is quantum computing, which is again another one that is just upcoming. It has a horizon of maybe 5 to 10 years, but already we are seeing use cases which were not possible with normal computing or the AI. AI also has its own limits, right? When you're throwing so much of data, when your number of parameters start growing, right? Your variables start growing. After a certain point in time, it's difficult to get the results on AI. So things like protein folding, drug discovery, identifying new materials. It's a very, very different world altogether that we are getting into. That is what is, I believe, will be enabled by quantum computing. The more and more we get it, the more and more it improvises. And it is currently at that stage where people are trying to build quantum computers using different principles of quantum computing. and then some of them are out there, some of them are having different limitations. So that's a ripe space for research and innovation, and that will give us the next big step when it comes to overall computing and IT.
That's nice, and that's quite informative as well. And I think our audience would also love to now, look up to these trends and explore more into these fields right now.
As we were discussing, Kanchan, and you mentioned a very interesting topic rather regarding quantum computing. So, if possible, if you can brief a little about what quantum computing is exactly, if you can just give our audience an idea of that.
Okay, it's a huge topic, really.
I know,
But
I know.
basically, quantum computing is kind of really where you have to unlearn. It's based on quantum physics.
Okay.
So quantum physics has certain principles, and using those principles, a completely new computing hardware and software is being built. Okay, so IBM is at the forefront of it. There are others like D-Wave who are using different principles of physics. So we are at that level where those gates are being made.
Wow.
Some are using quantum annealing to come to a solution. But people are trying to make different quantum computers today. So D-Wave has made something, IBM has made something. And what they're doing is they're allowing people to make use of that and try out new things. Right. So earlier, if you compare it when the computers being made that time, it was probably a few people getting together, all the researchers, scientists, and building those things. Then slowly it came out, and more companies started to manufacture those things. Today, it's a very interesting thing. Today, what is happening is they are making it and they're allowing people to start using it.
Okay.
It's a few bits, 2 qubits, we call it. So it's like they're giving you free to use and try out. So it is a very, very interesting way, even the way this whole technology is evolving. And how people are able to, while it is being built, because they're also taking feedback as to what are people doing, where they are succeeding, where they are failing, and then the whole thing is being built. So it is at that level. There are quantum gates, there are quantum bits, and the whole, you have to unlearn so many things to be able to get into the topic of quantum computing. I am still at a very student level on that topic, I would say, still learning and got to learn and unlearn. But yeah, I mean, that is one area where we believe that a lot of new things would come up. So yeah, so that's an interesting area to look forward to.
Thanks for that input, and I'm glad that you shared this idea, because as I think we also are kind of getting this new from you. There are a lot of things related to maybe this domain that we also kind of got our ideas into as to what is this space coming out to be, what is happening. But then it's always exciting to know more about it because it's so new and it's so fresh to understand. So thank you for that. Thank you for making us all understand. And with this, we've come to the most interesting part, and obviously one of my favorite part of the podcast. So this is what we call as a rapid fire round. So there would be quick questions, and there would be 3 questions, not more, but quick questions, and we'll take this forward from here.
Okay, sure.
And just to get a heads up, so are you ready?
Okay, sure. Bring it on.
Great. Yes. So the first question is, what would be that one book which impacted your life, in a big way?
I would say there's a series of books called Conversations with God. That really changed, or rather, there were a lot of questions that I was looking for. I was not able to get the answers or comprehend a few things, which was really, those are the books that satisfied my urge to know certain things. I won't say that, okay, that is the end. There is a lot more to go for. But certainly those gave me a very different perspective to life. So it is a story about a person who has a conversation with God. And there are so many questions. If you have God in front of you, you would also want to ask so many questions. So personal questions are being dealt with in the first book. In the second book, it is all about relationships. In the third book, it is all about beyond the earth, What else is there? So those are also
Wow.
the questions that you would like to ask the creator, right? So that's a very interesting set of books. It refers to our Indian philosophy also sometimes. This book came in, I think, the 90s, 80s, 90s. And I feel it is contextualized to today's world.
Yes. Okay. So the second question is, so if given a chance, which superpower would you want to, imbibe or have for a day?
Okay. I don't think this is a known superpower, but what I would like to do, if I can do anything, is reverse the global warming today.
Oh, okay.
Because so much of challenges are there today, and our next generations are going to face so many challenges because of the way we have behaved with nature as humanity.
Mm.
If I can change one thing going back, I would say that I would like to reverse that.
Okay. And so the last question is, so out of work, what is that one thing that, you can never get bored of?
I love to read different things, and I love to write. So those are the things I like to do outside work.
Okay, and so we have kind of reached the end of the podcast, although I feel there's so many questions in my mind, I would still want to ask you. But one final question, before we end the podcast. So, what are the key things that you would suggest to the new companies or the startups to be ready to face, as this whole landscape, this whole digital is changing?
Mm.
Because now we are seeing this upcoming trend of new startups, new businesses coming up with new creative ideas. So, what are the things that you would suggest them to keep an eye on, take care of those, and have them in their kitty while they're planning their, journey ahead?
Right. I think, we interact with a lot of different startups, some very
Yeah.
successful, some kind of go to certain level and then they can't go ahead.
Hmm.
And I think, idea wise, when you get an idea, and I have gone through that creative process where you find a problem, you look at that, then you say, okay, this is a solution. Now let me go ahead and build it.
Yeah.
And you're so excited in that whole mode. What I seen is that when people are doing this, the holistic picture
Hmm.
sometimes is not considered. Important choosing the right mentors who can give you
True.
that guidance, who can tell you where things may go wrong. And then
Hmm.
also the entire, so because I've done the whole cycle, I can tell you this: sales is not a very simple thing, right?
True. True.
It's very, very difficult to really inspire people to go for your product.
True.
If it is a very unique, very interesting product, people will still go for it. If it is something which is already available as an alternative in the market, then it becomes all the more difficult to do it. So before you
True.
take the plunge, right, make your idea robust, spend time on the
Hmm.
idea, spend time on really getting it all rounded, testing it out, right, to a certain extent, and then you can go ahead for it. That is one thing I would say. Second thing I
Yeah.
would say is look at technology upcoming. Okay, there are so many opportunities in terms of how this technology can change the world, right?
I mean that's a very powerful message, and I think this is what keeps us also going as people who are now maybe trying to do something in this space. And I think this also keeps a lot of people going because they know that
Yeah.
everyone is inspired to kind of lead it into a direction. So definitely, I mean, thank you for that message.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Kanchan, for taking your time out. We really appreciate it.
So more than welcome. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast thoroughly and it added value to you. Follow us to get information regarding all the upcoming podcasts. You may also reach out to us if you need help with AR/VR development or marketing services. Stay tuned and see you in the next podcast.